The most oversimplified definition of creativity that I can give you is the word vulnerability. And that is not supposed to be poetic. I mean it literally. See, anytime you create something that didn't exist before, a thought, a sentence, a video, a piece of music, an idea, whatever it may be, you're exposing this part of yourself that didn't have to be exposed. You didn't have to create something that didn't exist before. You could have stayed quiet. You could have consumed instead of produced. You could have kept it inside where it was safe and undefined. The moment you bring something out of your head and into the world, it stops being yours alone. And that is where the discomfort begins. Because now it can be misunderstood, it can be ignored, judged, or worse, it can be seen clearly. Most people don't struggle with creativity because they lack ideas necessarily. They struggle because creating forces them into a position where they're no longer protected by ambiguity. When something stays in your head, it can be perfect. The moment you express it, it becomes real, and real things are flawed. And that gap between the internal version and the external version is where vulnerability lives. We like to talk about creativity as if it's this beautiful, freeing process, and sometimes it is, but most of the time it's actually uncomfortable. It's exposing. It feels like standing slightly too close to the edge of something. Because creative work isn't just output, it's actually disclosure. Even when you think you're making something abstract, something neutral, something not about you, there's still you in it. Your perspective, your taste, your sense of timing, your values, your blind spots. People wouldn't be reacting to the thing you made in isolation. They'd be reacting to what it suggests about you. And that's why it feels personal even when it's not supposed to be. What makes this even more difficult is that we grow up learning how to avoid vulnerability, not how to sit inside it, We learn to say the right things, mirror what's accepted, keep opinions half-formed, soften edges so we don't stand out too much. Creativity fundamentally does the opposite. It sharpens edges. It commits to a point of view. And commitment is risky. The moment you commit to something creatively, you're saying, this is how I see things. This is what I think matters. This is my voice. And someone out there is not gonna like it. Someone will think it's wrong. Someone will scroll past it without even giving a shit. Someone will scroll past it or walk past it without even giving a shit. Well, your nervous system does not distinguish between social rejection and physical threat very well. So even mild exposure can feel heavy. And that's why resistance shows up before almost every creative act. People often confuse fear with lack of talent. They'll say, I'm not creative, when what they really mean is, I don't like how exposed I feel when I try. They'll say, I'm not creative, when what they really mean is, I don't like how exposed I feel when I try. Fear shows up as procrastination, perfectionism, endless refining instead of releasing. You tell yourself you're not ready, when in reality you're just not comfortable being seen yet. But the truth is, comfort and creativity rarely coexist. The more honest the work, the more vulnerable it feels. And the more vulnerable it feels, the more resistance you encounter. But that resistance doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It actually often means that you're close to something real. There is also this quiet grief that comes with creativity that people don't talk about enough. When you create, you're choosing one version of an idea and letting all of the other ones die. You're saying no to infinite possibilities in order to make one thing exist, and that's vulnerable. You're committing to this direction without knowing if it's the right one. You're actively choosing now instead of waiting for certainty, and certainty never actually arrives. So what do? You learn to create without guarantee. Another thing that makes creativity feel risky is that it's tied to your identity. If someone doesn't like your work, it's difficult not to hear it as, they don't like me. Even if you know intellectually that that criticism is about the work and not about you as a person, emotionally it still lands close regardless. And that's why some people keep their creativity hidden behind irony or detachment. They present things half seriously so they can retreat if needed. If you don't like it, fine. It wasn't that deep anyway. That kind of thing. But real creative growth happens when you stop giving yourself that escape hatch. When you let the work hold value and matter. And vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing everything or exposing your entire inner world all at once. It means honesty at the level that you're capable of right now. Some days that honesty is loud, some days it's subtle, some days it's just showing up and creating something when you don't particularly feel inspired to do it. Even that is vulnerable because it means not waiting for the perfect emotional state to begin. What's interesting is that vulnerability doesn't actually disappear as you get better. You might get more skilled, more articulate, more confident technically, but the vulnerability shifts instead of vanishing. Early on, you worry that people won't notice, but later on, you worry that the wrong people will. So the fear evolves, but it never truly leaves. And that is how you know that you're still creating honestly. It's my belief that the day creativity stops feeling vulnerable to me is gonna mean that it has become formulaic. And there is also a strange paradox here. The things you're most hesitant to express are often the things that resonate most deeply with others. Why is that? It's simply because they're specific. Specificity is vulnerable. Generality is safe. But general things don't move people. When someone connects with your work, it's usually because they recognize something of themselves in it. That recognition only happens when you're willing to be precise with emotion instead of protected. A lot of people wait for permission to be creative, permission from validation, numbers, credential, external approval. But creativity doesn't come with permission slips. It's gonna come with exposure. You don't earn the right to be vulnerable by being successful first. Vulnerability is the entry cost itself. And that's unfair, but it's also unavoidable. What helps is reframing vulnerability as information rather than danger. You know, that tight feeling before you create, the hesitation before you press post. Those are not stop signs, those are signals. They're telling you that something meaningful is being touched. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? Try asking, what is this feeling protecting? Try understanding where it even comes from, why it's there. Usually it's protecting your sense of self, your image, your story. Creativity asks you to loosen the grip on that story. And as time passes, something interesting happens. The more you practice being vulnerable creatively, the less catastrophic it feels. And that is not because rejection stops hurting. It's because you realize that you can survive it. You learn that being misunderstood doesn't erase you. Silence doesn't invalidate your effort. That not everything needs applause to be worthwhile. That's when creativity stops being about proving something and starts being about exploration. So, creativity is vulnerability because it requires you to stand behind something without knowing how it will land. And that is uncomfortable, but it's also alive. If you remove vulnerability from creativity, what you're left with is limitation, safe repetition, output without presence. There's nothing wrong with that occasionally, but it won't satisfy you for long. It's not what creativity is supposed to be like. You're not supposed to create for the fuck of it. You're supposed to create because you want to create. What actually nourishes people is honest creation. Even when it's imperfect, even when it's misunderstood. If you're feeling resistance toward creating right now, don't treat it as a flaw. Treat it as a sign that you're close to something that matters to you. You don't need to force confidence. You don't need to wait for fear to disappear. You just need to create while being aware that vulnerability is part of the cost. And the cost is worth it, not because it guarantees success, but because it keeps you connected to yourself. And that connection is rare and it's fragile. Creativity asks you to protect it, not by hiding, but showing up anyway. Good luck. I am rooting for you.